What's good, everybody? Little back-to-back video action here, and we just got done really covering the base information about isometrics, and now I want to get into another topic that focuses a little bit more on breathing in and of itself. But this is actually going to cover a topic that does deal heavily with the musculoskeletal system, and this is the presence of muscle armor or your fascial network. Okay, now in terms of your fascial network, what we want to talk about is what fascia is. Your fascial network is based on a specific musculoskeletal tissue known as your fascia. Now, when you talk about people talking about building your muscles and getting fit and things of that nature, very little information is talked about the fascia in and of itself. And it's very weird that this isn't talked about because your fascia is such an important part of your musculoskeletal system. Now, what is the fascia? Um, Fascia is a network of tissue that surrounds your muscular tissue. Okay? Down actually not even at the tissue level, but also to the cellular level. Um, and it's a network of tissue that surrounds and actually envelops a lot of your muscles, and because of it, a lot of the networks that are connected to your muscles, the nervous system, and how it runs through your muscles, and so on and so forth. Now, some of the key qualities of the fascia is that fascia is hard to feel. That is to say, that because there's not a lot of nerves connected to the fascial network, there isn't a lot of feeling from the fascia in and of itself. However, the fascia does present feeling in a sense of how it affects your muscles, which is what we're going to get into talking about. Um, and also the tensile strength of your fascial tissue. In many cases, the fascial tissue can be 8 times stronger than your muscles, than the muscle tissue that you have. And this is something to be very cognizant of, because when it comes to the fascia, one of its key factors is protection. And this is one of the things to be important to recognize, is that in many cases we have items within our body that can become obstructive when certain situations arise, especially when those situations arrive on a consistent basis, right? And in many cases, due to the fact that these tissues or these items within our body can build up, sometimes people can tend to think that these things are bad. That can't be any further from the truth, especially when you're talking about your fascia, right? The same thing can be said with our hormones, right? When you are overexposed to stress, there are certain hormonal responses that can happen in excess, such as excessive adrenal release and things of that nature. And when those hormones are released in excess, those hormones start to have a detrimental effect on your health. However, if you restore if you correct your exposure to stress, and you learn how to adapt to certain stressors in a beneficial way, then that balance, then that hormonal excess stops, and you can re-achieve equilibrium or even advance to a higher level of health. And this is the same thing with the fascia. The fascia, one of its key factors is to protect the muscles. And in fact, a it is a proper term to note fascia as muscle armor. The term for muscle armor was first coined by um, Wilhelm Reich, okay? And Wilhelm Reich was an individual who um, brought to note the idea of orgone energy or orgone. I don't know if people say orgone or orgone, but we'll just say orgone. Um, and one of his key um, focuses was on the idea of muscle armor. And muscle armor was a term utilized to characterize the presence of bodily, the presence and storage of bodily energy in the body. And his whole premise when it came to muscle armor is that when individuals experience certain occurrences in life, they can store the analysis and the reaction to those particular occurrences within the muscular skeletal framework. And the issue is that when individuals experience traumatic situations, in order for the body to process those traumatic situations in the best possible way, it can store that information within the musculoskeletal framework. And specifically, it's storing it within the fascial network. And in order to protect the human system from the damages that that energy can reap, many times that traumatic energy is stored in excessive buildup of fascial tissue. Now, on a physiological scale, what this can do is that it can warp the construct of your muscular skeletal system. So let's take me for instance. Um, I have a lot of condensed and warped muscular skeletal constructs within the left side of my body. There is a lot of stored tension and knottage in my back and in my chest, and it can really run down all the way to my left hip. And as a result of that, my entire body is kind of out of balance. Because while this part of my body is all twisted up in knots, a lot of this part of my body is condensed and not actually able to breathe and extend itself and equilibrate. And so there is a lot of imbalance between my left and my right side of my body, right? Well, in accordance with the idea of muscle armor and condensed fascial traumatic energy, these knots are due to compounded fascial tissue that arose as a result of physical, mental, and emotional traumas. Okay? And on the physical side, I can name at least 5 reasons as to why that can occur. And in part because of the mental and emotional experiences from those, as well as other forms of mental and emotional traumatic experiences, this fascial tissue continues to build and continues to condense. Okay? And so when we're talking about muscle armor, it arises as a response to the harmful or the non-beneficial occurrences that we have. The issue is that because that energy is consistently and constantly stored there, until it can dissipate, that particular energy is going to not only continuously pop up and show its effects, but it can have consistent non-beneficial um, effects on our lives. Now, how does this relate to the breathing exercises that we do? Well, when it comes to the breathing network, and we talked about this in the isometric videos, not only is the breathing network a normatively autonomic function that we can control, but there is a lot of nerves and muscles that are involved in the activity of breathing. And in fact, when we're talking about the breath overall, our lungs are some of our largest organs in our body. And because of that, think about the rib cage. The rib cage takes up the majority of our torso region. And as I talked about with Swami Rama, talking about the fact that when it comes to what it takes for the body to run, the body is really the head and the torso region. Okay? There aren't any organs in your arms or in your legs. These are done in order to get us from one place to another and in order to conduct activities throughout life, right? Um, but when we're talking about breath, the breath really utilizes a muscular framework that runs throughout our entire body, right? So we're not just dealing with the expansion of the lungs, but we also have the diaphragm that is responsible for allowing our lungs to expand. And that diaphragmatic muscle goes all the way into our abdominal region as well. And there's not only gross muscles that are involved in that, there are a lot of fine muscle fibers that are involved in that. Also, the presence of the spine within the cardiovascular network is also extraordinarily important in terms of its interaction with the nerves and all of the muscles, all of the muscle framework that goes into keeping the spine in its best shape. When we're talking about the breath that we utilize in this particular modality of breathing, the breath that we are utilizing is very powerful and it is very forceful. And when we are continuously breathing in that particular framework, on top of the advanced levels of oxygenation that can be involved, as well as the um, intermittent utilization of breath holding, whether it's on the inhale or whether it's on the exhale, the ability to continuously breathe like that has a very powerful effect on the fascial network due to the great deal of force and the frequency of what we are doing here. So we're not just breathing. Many of our practices don't just emphasize very powerful and very forceful breaths, but it also includes a relaxation phase. For example, when we're exhaling, many of our breathing practices don't involve very forceful exhale. The exhale is a relaxation, okay? But when we inhale with a lot of force, and that creates an expansion within our biological framework. That constant application of force, along with oxygenation and intermittent breath holding, has a very powerful effect on being able to dissipate the sometimes droves of condensed fascial tissue that we have running through our system. And because it's able to dissipate those things, it's also able to dissipate the condensed energy that is held in the fascial system. And so by being able to release that energy, the traumas that are locked into those things, and these traumas may not just be on the emotional side, these traumas can actually be straight on the physiological side. And so let's say you have a generational illness such as diabetes type 1, right? Diabetes type 1 is supposed to be a hereditary disease. If you are continuously working on the traumas that hold the energy for that to be a reoccurring existence or a reoccurring possibility in your health, you can actually eliminate that from your physiological system by performing breath work like we do in the breathwork revolution community and with the breath masters work that Brian provides here and in all of his various different courses, which again, by the way, boom, you know what I'm saying? um but this is something to be aware of when we're talking about these particular types of things, because, and I'm not saying anyone should follow what I did, right? But when it comes to the purpose of being able to dissipate these traumatic energies, being able to align your lifestyle habits with the purpose of being able to remove these energies and replace them with beneficial energies, or give yourself a chance to experience yourself without those traumas constantly present. Um, Conditioning your life habits towards that effort only helps to compound the interest of the effects of all of the other things that you might be doing. So, for example, if I wanted to, I could go to the gym and I could start pushing out weight and doing all that stuff, and I can get physically fit that way. However, I choose to do things like isometrics and self resistance exercises, not only because, for me at least, it actually produces a far more complete beneficial effect on my musculoskeletal system, but it also gives me the ability to directly work on the condensed fascia that exists in my body. And by being able to do that, I'm actually able to compound any effects of any other lifestyle habits that can be helpful in dissipating these particular non beneficial energies. My diet being primarily raw vegan, I utilize that diet because, at least for me, again, I'm not telling anybody to go raw vegan, because that's a decision you make after you have been able to ascertain that that's the best thing for you to do, right? Now, I'm up to talking to anyone who would be interested in it, but I am not here telling you, hey, you should be a raw food vegan because you don't want to toxify yourself with cooked food. Like, that part of my life is over. I used to be one of them warriors, right? Like, hey guy, you need to go do raw foods. But that's a decision that people have to make based on being able to find that innate value in that practice themselves. Um but I, I fashion as many of my lifestyle choices to being able to dissipate those energies, and I'm aware of other purposes, other activities that can be counterintuitive to that, i.e., smoking on them damn, tobacco sticks. You know what I'm saying? Um, it's all it's all meant in order for me to formulate an approach to life that gives me the best possible chance of living in a state of freedom and sovereignty that allows me to be the best version of myself that I can possibly experience while living on this planet, right? And so, all that is to say is that the breathing that we perform here creates a powerful level of force that has a direct effect on being able to dissipate the levels of muscle armor that we have in our system that can be storing those non beneficial energies, or those traumatically based energies that many of us are dealing with on a regular basis. So that's it for this particular video. Um, Hope that all of this made sense. Hope that everyone here is having a good day. And until next time, peace.